Right now, someone can walk into a public space and say their dog is a service animal and be allowed access without having to prove that dog is trained of capable of handling that type of environment. Hello, my name is Cassie Lee, and I'm proposing changes to service animal legislation to better address animal welfare and public safety. Service animals are trained to perform specific tasks for individuals with disabilities, and they're expected to work in environments that require a high level of behavioral control. That includes crowded stores, public transportation, and the medical settings. The issue is that current laws focus almost entirely on access, but don't address whether the dog is actually prepared for those demands. So while access is protected, welfare isn't being evaluated alongside it. Under the ADA, access is prioritized and verification is intentionally limited. There are no federal requirements for training, certification, or even behavioral standards. Because of that, there is no consistent way to determine whether a dog is capable of performing safely in public environments. In practice, that means there is no clear standard for what qualifies as a behaviorally sound service animal, even though these dogs are expected to function in complex, high-pressure settings. This leaves a gap where welfare is not considered until there is already a problem. That gap shows up most clearly in how these dogs are placed into working roles. Without any required standards, some dogs are put into environments that exceed what they can actually handle. And when that happens, the dog isn't just struggling behaviorally, it's also experiencing ongoing stress in situations that it can't escape from. From a behavior standpoint, that can lead to chronic stress, fear responses, and sometimes even aggression. It also creates risk for legitimate service animal teams, since an untrained dog can interrupt or interfere with essential tasks. More importantly, the current system only responds after something goes catastrophically wrong. So instead of preventing these situations, it depends on a failure before it takes action. To address this, legislation should be expanded to include a few specific protections. First, minimum welfare standards such as rest periods, workload limits, and access to veterinary care. Second, behavioral competency benchmarks to help determine whether a dog is actually suited for public access work. Third, a voluntary evaluation system that allows for oversight without restricting access to rights. And finally, handler education, since unrealistic expectations and improper handling are often part of the problem. These additions introduce structure without conflicting with the intent of the ADA. This approach improves welfare by preventing dogs from being placed in roles they are not equipped to handle. It also reduces behavioral fallout, which directly improves public safety. That matters because many of the risks associated with service animals aren't intentional misuse, but a lack of preparation and oversight. At the same time, it protects legitimate service animal teams by reducing interference from untrained dogs. Most importantly, it shifts the system from reactive enforcement to preventative protection, which is where current legislation falls short. Service animals are essential, but the current system only protects access, not the conditions those animals are working under. Strengthening legislation allows us to better protect both the individuals who rely on these dogs and the dogs themselves. Thank you so much for hearing me out today.